Comics the Magazine is the powerhouse periodical you need to have. From creator interviews to insightful articles, Comics delivers the best parts of the fandom each and every issue. It has an exclamation point in its name for a reason. So what are you waiting for? Get to your local comic shop and pick up the latest issue, and check out comicsthemagazine.com for more information. Comics the Magazine is what the fans are reading. Live from the 607, it's the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, where we're talking everything movies, TV, comics, and entertainment. Join in the conversation on social media with the hashtag ODPH, because here we go. Welcome to an all-new edition of Fanlight Zone Presents. My name is Ken M. You know me as the host of the ODPH podcast. I'm also the editor-chief here at Fanlight Zone. And today we have to talk about a book that's coming out on July 14th. That is not your average crime story by any stretch of the imagination, because Detective Claire Carlisle has got more going on in the sci-fi noir epic known as Waypoint that you definitely want to know about. And fortunately, we have a writer on here that knows a little bit more about her story than I do, but we're definitely going to be signing up for this campaign as soon as this episode is done. You might know his work from such projects as Ben 10, Mega Man Fully Charged, and also from companies like Kung Fu Monkey and Phoenix Pictures. Please welcome to the show the writer of Waypoint, Jeff Treppel. Jeff, what is going on?
Hey, it is a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Burbank, California. Yeah, hoping there's not an earthquake and that wall of records doesn't fall on me, basically.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, but they might have some tremors because of what this book is doing, because there is going to be some buzz about this after we get into it. And let's go kick off the questions here with, how did this whole story of Waypoint come to be?
I came up with it probably about 10 years ago at this point. I've been working with the Man of Action guys, which is Steve Siegel, Joe Kelly, Joe Casey, and Duncan Rouleau, if people don't know, on Ben 10, Mega Man, Fruit Ninja, stuff like that. And that kind of made me go like, well, I am surrounded by four of probably the most accomplished comic writers of the late 20th, early 21st century. maybe I could do a comic, and maybe, they'd be able to help me along. So I basically came up with it's basically what story would I want to tell? And so I immediately went back to my influences, which are old science fiction stuff like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and old pulp noir stuff like the Philip Marlowe mysteries and Nero Wolfe and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, well, what if I smash those two together and make them kiss, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't just want to tell because there's a lot of, ever since I started writing it, Far Sector has come out by N.K. Jemisin and stuff like that, which has this sort of thing. So I wanted to have my own perspective on it. And so ultimately it became, as it went, about my experiences essentially working in Hollywood. It's not about that. No one wants to read about a screenwriter, but it became about essentially the feelings of frustration and failure and depression that you go through when you're in an industry like this, right? Sure. So, but I wanted to do that in a fun way, and the fun way for me was put that in an alien space station, make Claire isolated, but literally she's the only human on that station, right? So she has to deal with all these weird aliens. She doesn't have any sort of basis for their cultures or any sort of prejudices. She's kind of this outside force. And it's about her over the course of solving this case, ultimately coming to terms with how she can move forward from her own internal frustrations and feeling of isolation.
And like I say, from what we've seen thus far in the preview pages that are on the Kickstarter link, there is a lot going on with this story. And it's definitely one that is going to, I think, really capture readers' attentions once they get this book in their hands and sign up for the Kickstarter campaign. But as you alluded to, this is your first venture into the world of comics. So what has been the biggest challenge for you entering this realm in comparison to your other work?
The big thing has been that I've kind of been my own boss. When I've worked with the Man of Action guys, or worked with producers like John Rogers or things like that, they call the shots, right? They have either they call the shots or the people above them call the shots. When I was working on Mega Man, there was, I think, 3 layers above even Man of Action, because you had Capcom, you had the animation company, you had all this stuff. So this was me actually just being the boss, having to make all these decisions myself, right? Like I couldn't kind of fall back on here's the Bible that I've been handed, here's all that. So, which is really freeing, but also really scary, right?
Yeah,
Because suddenly
it's got to be terrifying.
Yeah, you're standing on the precipice. Everything is kind of lying on you. You have to find a great artist, which took a while. And I did a lot of the scanning through DeviantArt and stuff, which I do not recommend. There's some weird stuff on DeviantArt.
I could only imagine. Yeah.
Until I found my artist Jacob Wisniewski on Twitter, just replying to a comic, like a call for samples kind of thing. So you had to find the artist, I had to find the letterer, and then ultimately, when I decided I was going to go out on my own with the Kickstarter, because if I'm gonna do something, if the purpose of this was to do something that I own, I've said this in other interviews and places, like I am absolutely grateful for all the opportunities I've been given. Like all the shows I've worked on, like Ben 10, I love Ben 10, Mega Man, loved since a kid. Like some of the stuff that didn't get produced was, stuff that I felt really passionate about, but it was all other people's stuff. This was my thing. So if I'm going to do it and I can't find a publisher who will let me own it, and look, I understand how the business works, unless your like Image obviously lets the people own it, but I'm not at Image level yet. Let's be honest here. Like, hopefully with this book, someone at Image will look at it and go, "This guy's pretty good." Yeah. But that's my impression of Image Comics. But if I was going to own it myself, then ultimately it had to come down to I have to kind of put it out myself, and that has been a whole other learning process as well, because it's not just, oh, here I have these pages, they're lettered, they're nice and everything. Like I had the book done, and then half the work on top has like half as much again I've done to get this book out into the world.
Yeah, and especially going into the world of Kickstarter, I mean, especially for the first time, definitely has to be an eye-opener experience. I would say, what has been the biggest impression made on you thus far, obviously being the first time comic, but now first time with Kickstarter?
It's been interesting. It's the tricky thing is that I've been learning, because I've been working with Prana, which was Adam Freeman, and some other great folks. So they've been sort of helping me through the process. But what I didn't realize, because I'd originally thought maybe I'll do it myself, but then I was connected with Prana, and I'm like, these guys know what they're doing. I'll go with them. Yeah. So I built the page and everything, but there's a whole gamification to it that I didn't kind of realize coming into it. The way that you structure the tiers, the way that you tease it out to people and stuff like that. Because Kickstarter's been a major force in self-publishing and creation for what, 15, 16 years now. I'm not sure
exactly like that. It's exploded over the past decade.
Yeah. And so just like any other business, like when it started as the Wild West, right? People were just throwing stuff out there, offering all sorts of stretch goals and stuff. Now there is just as much as any other route you would take to get the book out. There's a way to do it. And learning about how to do that has been, it's been an experience. And like, especially for future books, I've learned a lot, picked up on, but I think the really nice thing about it is, and once the thing goes live and I'm able to directly interact with the backers and all that, I think will be really cool. But I think what really appeals to me about Kickstarter, and I have Kickstarted, like I'm an avid board gamer, I'm an avid comics reader, so I've Kickstarted a ton of this stuff. And like, what's really nice about it is it gives you a sense of ownership in this creation, right? Is like, because again, you buy a book from Image, and again, I'm not trying to crap on Image. I love Image, but you buy a book from them, and they've already, they've printed it, they've already done all these costs. You are doing a kind of end-to-end thing. With Kickstarter, you're essentially doing a pre-order. Like, if this Kickstarter doesn't get funded, and I think it will. But if it doesn't get funded, like I need the money to print the book, right? Like people who are backing this Kickstarter are directly contributing to this book existing in the physical world. And I think that's kind of cool. That's like, it goes back to, the Renaissance. You have the Patreon app now. You had patrons, you had people. Michelangelo wasn't just being a genius on his own, right?
Yeah.
I'm not comparing myself to Michelangelo, but
No,
he
no,
had
for sure. Yeah.
yeah, he had the backing of these rich families. And so this is a way to, like, unless you're personal friends with Elon Musk and can kind of get that money, this is a way to get like a bunch of people to give it. I know I'm explaining Kickstarter as it is, but like, to me, I think that that's a really fun, interactive way to approach it. And that's something that, again, I'm really excited about, is being able to get in there, hear people's feedback, see people's reactions when they first read the thing on the Kickstarter page and all that.
Yeah, well, I think that's just something with Kickstarter too. It's just so much more of a personal connection because it's the direct interaction with the audience, and you can kind of get a real temp in the room and see about what the vibe is for that, and then obviously take that experience with you to wherever you go for your next project. So, I mean, that's one thing I always think is really a benefit about doing Kickstarter books is, you just have that instant connection, and it's a live and learn process. And then obviously, as every time somebody does a new campaign, there's always something to take away from it and grow from the next project. And
it's interesting seeing what people respond to. Like, I did a live podcast the other day, and they had people in the audience, and I pitched the book at the end of the podcast, and somebody like really grabbed onto on the Kickstarter page. Like, we compare it to Saga, of course, and Doctor Who, and the person really grabbed onto Doctor Who. I'm like, okay, maybe that's like something that, and I love Doctor Who, obviously, but
yeah.
Like, I'm like, maybe that's something I need to hit harder. And I wouldn't have necessarily thought of that if I hadn't gotten that direct feedback from that potential backer.
Yeah. I mean, that always is helpful too. Like I say, the more information, the more connection is always the better. And especially going into this book, like you've worked with other people before, but this first time working with your artist, how has the creative process been with that?
The creative process of working with the artist it's because we were doing, he's Jacob, as you could maybe tell from the last name, is in Poland. And so we were mostly, and he's not fully, like, he's fluent enough in English, but he's not fully English speaking, which is why I'm on here, I guess, and not him. And again, he's great. He's been great to deal with, but it was a lot of back and forth with email. But honestly, like, when you find that right artist who gets what you're trying to do, it's magic. Like, I gave him the script, and then he had requested some side notes, which are going to be we're putting together like a little making of zine that we're going to have as an add-on. And so you can see some of those original notes that I hand wrote him, because I was like on vacation, and he messaged me like, hey, can you get me some like deeper stuff on these characters? So I just grabbed a notebook and hand wrote out a bunch of stuff for him. But he grabbed it, and I mean, you've seen some of those pages. He built that world from, like, in the script, I'm like, there's, a lot of different cool aliens, like all these different things. And then once, like, in issue 1, it's a little more detailed. And then issues 2, 3, and 4, it's just like, yeah, man, have fun. Like, it's like building that trust with him was great. Like, it was honestly really easy to work with him, because he just, again, like I said, he immediately got that kind of like cool heavy metal magazine like world that I wanted to build with this comic.
Yeah, no, Jacob's art, especially too, with that world building, that's so key to any story, because that's obviously the first impression. You really have to nail that. And just from the preview pages that are alone on the link right now, that is enough to sell you, because there is just so much of a really cool sci-fi noir type deal. It really just jumps out to the readers. And I think that, yeah, it's the instant gravity, that pulls you into the story. And then let alone when you start diving into Claire's story, because she is a very complex character, would you say?
Yeah. It's like I mentioned, Steven T. Siegel from Man of Action has been kind of my mentor through this whole process. And one of his big things, and I can't thank him enough, and I will continue thanking him on these podcasts, but one of his big things is, it's not write who you know, it's write who you are, right? You want to, it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm a big, record collector, so I'm going to write about records. Like, no, you got to write about like who you are inside. And so Claire is going through a lot of stuff, and it's not necessarily stuff that you would, if you're interacting with me on a day-to-day basis, you'd be like, oh, Jeff is dealing with some stuff. But there's a lot of, like I was saying, in Hollywood especially, I've been in this industry, and as much as honestly there is one anymore, things have been a little the last few years with all the consolidation and the pandemic and everything. It's an industry born to create imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
It's an industry born to essentially isolate you. Like, And so that's kind of what I was feeling. And so I poured, even though, like, again, like I said, it's not the story of a struggling screenwriter, like, even though there have been many great noirs about that. It's not, I'm like, I wanted to take those kind of feelings that I had of the isolation, the depression, the imposter syndrome, the kind of past feelings of being burned on projects and stuff, and put that in a character who was not at all on the surface, like, right? So so Claire, to me, is very, at the beginning, she's very kind of guarded. She's very sarcastic. She's in the reason, and this is a tangent, but
not sure.
I had a lot of, there were a lot of different iterations of the title. And the title originally for the book, which I got a lot of feedback on, and it's like, okay, I'll change it. But the title initially was Stationary, because it's a pun on space station, but it's also because Claire feels like she's stationary in her life, right?
Okay.
She's stuck in this place. And eventually I settled on Waypoint when I read a title, which gives you kind of the more sci-fi feel, it gives you the space station feel, but it also indicates Claire is at a waypoint. She is not at the end. She's kind of stuck in this place. And she's struggling with, how do I get out of this place? And the answer ultimately is to be active, right? It's to go out there, meet people, build relationships, and push through what you think is the right thing to do and what you think is the thing that you need to do to get yourself to the other side of all of this. Which is, I'm not going to say it's an especially like original take on story. There's only so many types of stories, but it's one that speaks deeply to me.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be speaking to the audience too, like I say, just from the little snippet, but just with that kind of message too. I mean, making a connection like that on that level, that's something that, fans can definitely relate to, and then watch the journey of the character going forward. And especially in the sci-fi background to it. For you as a creator, what is the biggest draw to dabble in this genre?
It's just one of those things. It's like, I've loved science fiction since I was a kid. I was reading Isaac Asimov. I was reading Hitchhiker's Guide, Poul Anderson, all those authors back when I was in, elementary, high school kind of stuff, or elementary, middle school. Like, that's what I grew up on. I think it was just, I like spaceships and stuff. A lot of the cartoons when I was a kid were very science fiction oriented, right? When I was growing up, it was like Transformers or Exo Squad or Bucky O'Hare or whatever random stuff around there. There's a lot of very science fiction heavy cartoons when I was growing up. X-Men even, you have giant robots running around. They go into space all the time.
Yeah.
It's a fun playground. And it's, the nice thing about science fiction is, like, I know that there's there's hard science fiction and there's a little more pulpy stuff. And like, the hard science fiction is interesting because that gets into like the actual science nitty gritty of it. But for me, what's interesting about it is it gives you a layer of abstractness between what you're writing about and the reality that you're speaking about, right? Like, it's easier to make to have a message about bigotry, for example, in something like X-Men, where it's like, oh, they're bigoted against mutants versus they are specifically bigoted against these marginalized people, right? Yeah. So for me, the appeal of science fiction is you can tell these stories that have all these little bells and whistles, right? Like, that's the fun. I have a friend who I board game with, and he does not like space. I'm like, how do you not like space stuff? It's so cool. Like, I'm not sure we'll ever actually get there, but like, there's something about staring into that night sky and imagining what's out there. Because it could be anything. And so you can combine that. This could be anything but it's actually about these things that I want to deal with on Earth. But there's enough of a distance between the two things that you're not necessarily hitting things that would turn people off or alienate people. Does that make sense?
Oh no, it makes perfect sense. Because I think the one thing too with sci-fi is it's so much of a wide open playbook that you can really push the envelope a little more further than some might think, because it's really just that much of an open landscape to create on. And I think in stories like this too, where you're having Claire's story as as the focal point, but that is the backdrop, I think it just adds a nice element to the book. And it really is not your average story, but like you alluded to, tying in elements of Doctor Who and Saga and just like that kind of vibe. I think it's just when you put it all together, that's where you really know you got something special. And I can't stress to our audience enough about Waypoint really has got some of this. going on.
Well, I think what's fun about doing it from Claire's point of view specifically is there's a whole in the background of there's a whole, intergalactic politics and like different factions that hate each other and all that. And Claire doesn't care about any of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
She just has a case to solve. So you can get this sense that, like, especially in a comic book form, in a novel, you can really get deep into that stuff. In comic book form, especially, at least the type that I like to write and read, the fun of it is like all this stuff is there. It's implied that it's there, but we're not focusing on it. We're focused on who we're seeing this through, which is, again, somebody who's just like, okay, that's cool. I don't care that your empire hates their empire. Like, I just need to know where you were at this time, right? Like, and so I think it's a nice way to show that there's it's the tip of the iceberg analogy, right? Is that like 90% of what you write is not going to be on the page. You're just going to see that little tip of it. But like in this case, it's through the eyes of someone who I think the audience can relate to.
And I think there's going to be something that fans are really going to dig about this. Like I say, there's that connection point. And especially going into the independent comic scene right now, right? It feels like there's such a renaissance of like, no matter what you're looking for at the comic shops, there's something for everybody. What is your take on the current scene right now? I mean, you're an avid reader. What are you picking up at the shops?
I tend to like... I guess let me grab what I have on next to me. Let's see. I picked up this recently. This is fantastic. This appealed to me. I mean, Scotty Young is obviously love his stuff, but what I love about a book like this is it's kind of you could tell this in novel form, but the way that he and Jorge Corona use the medium to make this haunted house story feel unique to the comic medium. Because I've read a ton of haunted house books. I've seen a ton of haunted house movies. Like, I just love that, like, the use of just even the way they position the panels really adds to that eeriness and all that. Like, and that's something that I really love about the comic medium. But yeah, like I tend to go in, I tend to look for like, what is something that I couldn't necessarily find in a different medium. I watch a lot of anime, I watch a lot of movies, I read a lot of books, but like, what's something that is going to give me an experience that I can only get in the comics? And I think, like you said, like, you're doing a lot, they're getting a lot of stuff right now, even in non-indie circles, like Daniel Warren Johnson's run on Transformers, right? Like that gives you something different than you would get from the cartoons or the movies. Yeah, I think that's what I love about comics, and that's what excites me about working in the medium, especially coming from the world of linear, because film and television is very linear, right? You press play, it plays through, and now obviously streaming, you can pause and look at things, but it's more meant to be soaked in than for you to take in the details. And what I love about comics is, you can let it soak in, but then you can like zoom in and be like, oh, here's this cool little thing. Like, I watched Ghost in the Shell, the new one, last night. And it's like, and I loved it, but it's also like there's so much going on. And whereas with the manga, you can pick it up and you can appreciate kind of the individual drawings a little more.
Yeah. No, the new one is very, very busy, and all the right ways too. But it's just like there's a lot to like process as you're watching it. And then especially going to the shops, there's just so much out there for everybody jumping into it. It's an amazing feeling. And then obviously after Waypoint, what is next on the horizon? Can you tease us about? Do you have obviously more comic work coming on that we should be on the lookout for that you can talk about?
I'm developing the next thing for the next Kickstarter. I think I want to move in more of a, as you could tell from the t-shirt and the records and everything, and my career writing about heavy metal. I like heavy metal. And so I want to do a book that sort of and so I have a book that I'm working on that I think captures the feel and the joy and the kind of awesomeness that I get when I listen to heavy metal, but in a way that doesn't feel, and I don't want to put down other people, but it's difficult to capture that on paper. And so so I'm working on kind of a horror book that I think captures the vibe of listening to heavy metal without necessarily being like, oh, here's people with like electric guitars hitting demons with them, right?
Yeah. No, in fact, you just kind of stole my next question, because I was going to allude to that. Obviously, you worked on Decibel and a few other places as a very well-known heavy metal journalist. Is there a playlist for Waypoint?
There are 4 actually.
Okay.
At first I was like, maybe I should do one for each issue, but then I decided to kind of zoom in on different vibes. And so the end of each issue does have a different playlist. And there's one that's about Claire, one that's kind of a more general, like space atmosphere, one that's kind of for the fun detective stuff, and one that's for there's a nightclub run by a particularly unsavory guy that's a big centerpiece to a lot of the action scenes. So I wanted to put in some fun, like space disco and dance stuff. So I have 4 different playlists, and as part of the zine that we're putting together, it's going to have some of my thoughts on putting those playlists together. It's going to have some collected music reviews that I've had published in places about like that either relate to the comic or directly connect to songs that are on the playlist. And because to me, I think that I know it's dancing about architecture, right? But it's also like, I feel like comics and music, especially the sort of more energetic type music that I like to listen to, really kind of hit a lot of the same emotional buttons for me. And so that connection, I think, is one that, even though, yes, you cannot actually play a song on the page of a comic book, I think that having that connection to music can really deepen your experience of reading it.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think there's a certain synergy, music and comic, and especially you have like the right song on and you're reading it, like you'll always remember that moment. And like I allude to, like for me, the first time I picked up Mask #1 that just came out, all I could see when I was seeing that opening sequence is Motley Crue's Kickstart My Heart. Like literally. And I remember I was talking with Dan and Pi from the creative team about it. I'm like, literally, that's the first thing. And sure enough, every time I read that, I'm like, takes me right to Motley Crue on that. And I think, like, especially when you can have something like that connect with the audience, it's a big bucket of win too.
Humans are we lose a lot of it when we're dealing with everything over screens like this. Yeah. But humans are extremely sensory creatures, right? And that's part of the reason that I'm doing the Kickstarter versus like just putting because I could put it out online and charge whatever for it, but for me, like, the Kickstarter the book is, by the way, for the viewers, the book is done. It is complete, other than a few design, like finishing production and that stuff. Like, all the pages are done. So for me, I could put this out like today, just drop it online. But there's something about that physical experience of paging through a comic, feeling that paper. I spent so much time making decisions about paper stock for this book. And it's important.
No, like, it is. It's a very, how do we put this? Very underrated part of comics.
Yeah. It is like, and there's something more like, I have so much stuff on PDF on my iPad, and it feels like you're just gliding through glass. Whereas, again, picking up a physical book, you're getting that physical sensation on your fingers. You're physically turning the page. Like, it's that kind of thing that the pushback to the streaming and the ease of everything is that you with all that, you miss that sort of human element. Like, and so hearing is part of that, having that connection to it. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend like tasting the book, but like the getting Claire's theme song for me, and it actually came way after I finished the book, was this garbage song from last year called
because I was going to ask you that as another question too. Is there a certain song that sums up Claire? And obviously, because like I say, she's so complex as a character that it's kind of tough to nail down. But if you have a song in mind, I definitely want to know that. Because
it's There's No Future in Optimism is the name of the song. I wanted to make sure I got the name right. It's from Garbage's new album last year, which is fantastic. And I'm like, I heard that song and I'm immediately like, that's Claire. Like, perfect. It's just got this cool kind of synthy vibe to it. It's both cynical and kind of optimistic. Like, it captures a lot of the warring feelings in her head in music form to me.
No, and that's perfect. And especially too with her, if you had the chance to cross over Claire into any other universe, legal ramifications, whatever, everything's waived, everything's cleared, everything's a go, who would you cross over Claire into for a story, and why?
That is an interesting question. I think I would probably say, and I know I mentioned it earlier, but the world of Saga is a really fun one for me. It's one that it feels like when you pick up those books, it's just it feels like you want to just kind of hang out with those characters, some of the characters.
Yeah, I would say some, not all.
Like I feel like it'd be fun to kind of drop her into a universe like that, where it's, because I think those characters especially are very passionate, and I think that would challenge her in an interesting way.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. That would be a very, very fun story to do. And then
hack slash, right?
Or that would be a wild one. I would say
That'd be a wild one.
that would be a wild story. All right, I need to refocus for a second after seeing those two worlds come together. So that being said, though, we did allude to that you have a very heavy background in the heavy metal music genre. What do you think is the all-time best heavy metal album of?
It's an obvious answer to me, at least, but like if I was going to pick one metal album to hand to somebody and be like, this is heavy metal encapsulated, it would be Master of Puppets by Metallica.
Great
like
choice.
As much as I hate being basic like that, it's just like every time I put that out, I'm like, this is it, whether or not you can argue whether it's the best or whether it's just like it is metal, like in its purest form. Like,
yeah, no, it's damn near perfect, if not fully perfect. Like I said, I'm a big Metallica fan, so I can fully agree with that statement. It's
like
just
I want to pull out something obscure, like Blood Incantation is a band that I absolutely love. Their album Absolute Elsewhere from a couple of years ago is like the most mind-blowing thing I've heard. But again, it's you need that background in metal to, I think, fully appreciate it. Whereas Master of Puppets, you put it on, you get it, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's not there's no
gray area. It's like straightforward as it gets. So no, I could definitely understand that. And how would you say is the state of metal for anybody that's not listening to it like right now?
There's a lot of really cool stuff going on in the genre. It's one of those things where it's hit a point where I'm not sure how much like insane evolution there's going to be in the genre, but it's got to the point where it's like there are enough interesting pathways for artists to explore, and there's enough like I hate the word authenticity, but you can always tell the difference between like, sorry, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. It's like I was talking about with how I wanted to make Waypoint specific to me, right? It's like I've heard a lot of bands, and I'm not saying they don't love what they do. They're having fun, they're doing it. But like I've heard a lot of bands that you put it on, you're like, okay, I could be listening to Judas Priest or whatever instead of this. This is just kind of a carbon copy. You can always tell when a band has their own kind of perspective that they're putting on the things. So even if it's something that you've heard before or it's working within a familiar genre, sometimes a band will just come in and they'll just have that kind of undefinable it to it.
Yeah.
That makes you go like, okay, these guys like have a really specific thing they're trying to do here. And they're using the music versus letting the music use them. Like they're using the I'm getting a little into kind of meta stuff here, but using the like genre is a tool as opposed to like something that you fit your thing into, right? Like like me being able to say like Waypoint is a science fiction mystery story is really helpful, right? It immediately puts you where it is. But also like I don't want it to just be like this is influenced by science fiction and this is influenced by mystery stories only, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that the interesting thing that you get from the best bands in the genre, that your Blood Incantation, I'm going to say some names that will probably make you laugh, but there's bands like Blood Incantation, which I mentioned before, who take this really complex extreme metal that was kind of originated by bands like Morbid Angel, this kind of really, really complicated death metal. And then they combine that with like Tangerine Dream and that very ambient, very like synthesizer heavy, like vibe based things, and they do it in such a way that you can tell they love both, and it just works. And it should not work, right? It should not work having these enormous riffs and screaming, and then just this really just putting you into the middle of the frickin' end of 2001. But they do it, and bands like them were like Frozen Soul are this death metal band out of Texas who sing about essentially the Ice Age. And so it's kind of fun. They found this interesting dichotomy between we're from the hottest place in the country and we're singing about like this kind of glacial kind of thing. And that gives it a unique vibe to it that I think makes it really interesting and cool.
Right.
I mean, it probably, And I'm not going to lie, if you're not a death metal guy and you put that on, you're going to go, "Yep, that's death metal."
Yeah. I could only imagine some people are going to be like, "Wait, what is this?" Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's and you have bands like some bands this year, like Exodus from the '80s. They put out their best album this year.
Really?
Like I would say ever. And it's because you can tell that it's five guys who like each other, got in a room and are like, we're just gonna blast out the best thrash metal we possibly can. And it's really satisfying. It's like reading a really, really good like X-Men run, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're like the X-Men kind of except for obviously Hickman turned the whole thing on the head, but you're going to get what you're going to get from a run, but you're going to that run of comics because you know what you want to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I think there are bands that embrace that and just make it really enjoyable. Like, yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think there's a lot of bands that are basically, in short, there's a lot of bands that are taking interesting influences from other places and bringing them into what they're doing here. Imperial Triumphant take free avant-garde noise jazz and combine it with like really discordant death metal, and it's with an Art Deco theme.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so cool. It's not for everyone, but things shouldn't be for everyone. If it's something for everyone, then it can be bland. I'm not saying that,
No, not even take it that way, but it's just there's certain things that just stand out, and the audience will find it that it's meant, in that kind of situation.
So there's bands that are taking cool outside influences and making it and doing interesting things, and there's bands that are taking well-trodden genre tropes and going, how do we make this our own?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's kind of where metal is at, and there's a lot of cool stuff being made for people that are, again, I'm aware that there's a fairly big barrier to entry, but this is the thing. Like, I feel like a band like Sleep Token now are really big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not my thing. It's not my thing at all. But what bands like that are good for is people listen to it. It's hitting there, it's hitting people, and then they go, "Hey, I like this." And there's some a little bit extreme type stuff in there. So they listen to that, then like, okay, well, what else is out there in the genre? Then they go listen to like Deftones, and they're like, okay, this is cool. Maybe I'll go try to listen to the stuff that influenced them or that was influenced by them. And you find that way in. I didn't start off listening to Tumult, right, or Horrendous.
Yeah.
I came in, I listened to Judas Priest. I put that on. I'm like, okay, this is cool. All right, what's a little harder than this? Okay, Iron Maiden. Okay, digging this. Metallica, digging this, and then eventually you're like, okay, what is this death metal stuff? Then you listen to it and you're like, nope. But then after a while, you're like, you hear the riffs. You hear the passion in the vocals. You hear the way that they're used as another type of like instrument, essentially. And at a certain point, if you're of that right mindset, it clicks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like it's like with comics. Like it's like Dave McKeon's art isn't for everyone, but once you get it, it's like,
yeah, it's
cool stuff.
So the final question for you is, what is your favorite mystery story of all time?
Favorite mystery story of all time. The one I keep coming back to is specifically the Robert Altman adaptation of The Long Goodbye.
Okay.
I feel like it captures a moment I wasn't alive for the moment because it's from the 70s, but it captures this really interesting moment in America in a very specific way, this kind of interesting nihilism of the 70s, but in a way that's, again, with the main character sort of filtered through this guy who's just kind of doesn't care about any of this stuff and is bumbling through it. And I think what's fun about it is it's just, I approached Waypoint this way, is the mystery, like there are mysteries, there's the things where you're like supposed to sit down, you're supposed to get all the little clues and you're supposed to figure out the mystery. And there's one where you're just following the detective. Mm-hmm. And the detective's finding his way through the case, and eventually he comes to some sort of conclusion. The actual solution to the mystery doesn't necessarily matter. It's the conclusion that it's the message that you get from what the conclusion to that mystery is. And usually it's rich people suck or something to that effect. But it's to me, following that character through that process of discovery is the most fun part of mysteries, because it's nice to have a tight, like Sherlock Holmes, like, oh, okay, this is how it was solved. But for me, the journey is the the joy of it, as
Mhm.
opposed to necessarily a really brilliant solution.
Yeah. And I think when fans pick up Claire's story, they're going to have that same feeling, because this story definitely is not what you think it is, but it's got so many different elements going on. You're going to gravitate towards something with it. And this is going to be a Kickstarter campaign you don't want to miss. So in the liner notes of this episode, either on YouTube or in podcast form, is the Kickstarter link. Go there, sign up, make sure you don't miss this on day one. Because trust me, as soon as fans are going to get this book in their hands, they're going to be raving about it, and you don't want to be missing out on this. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me today. We definitely have to catch up after the issues come out.
Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely. And thank you for watching another edition of Fanlight Zone Presents. We'll see you next time.